All right, let's dive deep today into Aries the Ram. We're going way beyond those daily horoscopes and really exploring Linda Goodman's take on this fiery sign. Think of it kind of like a crash course on all things Aries. But instead of textbooks, we've got insightful analysis and just enough astrological spice to keep things interesting.
Yeah, and what I think is so fascinating about Goodman's work is, you know how she connects Aries to this image of a newborn? It's not just like listing traits, it's about capturing that essence.
Of their energy.
So we're talking about that like a raw, unfiltered energy you see in a baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Completely absorbed in their own needs,
Yeah.
demanding attention, not exactly known for patience.
Exactly. And Goodman really emphasizes that this isn't about being selfish. It's about Aries experiencing the world with this fresh, almost primal intensity. They're driven by impulse, that need for immediate gratification, just like a baby who needs to be fed right now, regardless of whether it's 4 a.m. Okay, so we're seeing that impatience, that kind of like me-first energy that can sometimes make Aries come across as a bit, shall we say, demanding.
Yes, but remember, this is also coupled with a certain innocence. Just like you wouldn't hold a grudge against, a crying baby. There's a disarming quality to an Aries directness. They're not trying to manipulate or anything. They're simply expressing their needs and desires with that same unfiltered honesty.
It's like they haven't learned to sugarcoat things yet.
Yeah.
But I'm also seeing the connection to the ram symbolism here, right? That image of charging head first, horns out, ready to take on the world.
Absolutely. Goodman connects those ram's horns to Aries' boldness, their tendency to act first and think later. It's that Martian energy, Mars being the planet that rules Aries, urging them to conquer, to assert themselves, even if it means bumping heads along the way.
That sounds like a wild ride. But let's be honest, not all ram charges end in victory. What about the potential downsides of this impulsive, headstrong nature? Where do things get messy?
Well, for starters, diplomacy might not be their strong suit. Goodman highlights how an Aries' honesty, while refreshing, can also be brutally blunt. They're not exactly known for tact or subtlety.
So while you always know where you stand with an Aries, you might sometimes wish they'd soften the blow a little, right? It's like, thanks for the honesty, but maybe next time you could wrap it in a slightly less abrasive package.
Exactly. And that lack of tact can create friction in relationships. Aries might unintentionally hurt others with their straightforward remarks, especially if they haven't learned to temper that fiery nature with a bit of sensitivity.
So there's definitely a learning curve there. But what about the positives? Goodman talks about Aries' courage and leadership qualities, right? It's not all headbutting and blunt remarks.
Oh, absolutely. Remember that Martian energy isn't just about aggression. It's about action, initiative, and a pioneering spirit. Goodman praises Aries' boldness, their willingness to take risks, and their incredible optimism. They're the ones who inspire others with their can-do attitude and their unwavering belief in themselves.
So they're the trailblazers, the ones who dive headfirst into uncharted territory. And their enthusiasm can be pretty contagious, right? Like, even if you're hesitant, their energy might just pull you along for the ride.
Exactly. Think of them as that spark that ignites the fire, the driving force that gets things moving, and that optimism is a key part of their charm. They have this almost childlike faith in the possibility of success, and that can be incredibly inspiring, especially in challenging times.
All right, so we're seeing this fascinating mix of traits, the impulsiveness, the boldness, the honesty, the optimism. It's like a whirlwind of energy. But how does all of this translate into specific areas of life, like health, finances, or relationships?
Well, let's start with health. What's interesting is how Goodman links Aries' fiery nature to their physical well-being. Remember that Martian energy we talked about? It's not just a metaphor. It actually manifests in their physicality.
Okay, now that's where it gets really interesting. So we're not just talking about a fiery personality. We're talking about a literal connection between their energy and their physical body.
Precisely. Goodman suggests that this intense energy can make them prone to things like headaches, cuts, burns, even fevers. Think of it like their inner fire, expressing itself physically.
Wow, so they're literally burning with intensity. I can see how that could lead to accidents or impulsive actions that result in, bumps and bruises.
Yes. And Goodman also points out a connection to infections and even kidney problems, which she links to their tendency to push themselves too hard, to ignore their limits. They get so caught up in that external battle, in pursuing their goals, that they sometimes neglect their internal needs.
It's like they're so focused on conquering the world that they forget to take care of themselves along the way.
Yeah.
So for an Aries, learning to slow down and listen to their body is crucial, right?
Absolutely. Goodman emphasizes that cultivating patience, learning to pace themselves, and incorporating a bit more cautious deliberation could go a long way in preventing health issues. For Aries, it's about finding that balance between action and reflection, between pushing forward and knowing when to rest and recharge.
Okay, so we're seeing that even though Aries is all about action and charging ahead, they also need to learn when to hit the brakes, both literally and metaphorically. What about money? How does that fiery, impulsive energy play out in their finances?
Well, according to Goodman, Aries isn't necessarily driven by material wealth. They might be incredibly generous and willing to share what they have, but managing their own resources might not be their strongest suit.
So it's not that they don't value money, but it's not their primary motivator. What are they more interested in then?
Goodman suggests that Aries individuals are often more interested in glory, recognition, and the thrill of the chase. They might be drawn to pursuits that offer a sense of accomplishment or adventure, rather than focusing on building a fortune.
It's like they'd rather conquer a mountain than climb the corporate ladder, right?
Yeah.
That pioneering spirit seems much more appealing than accumulating wealth.
Exactly, and this ties into their Martian energy as well. Remember, Mars is the god of war, of action and conquest. So for an Aries, building a fortune might seem less fulfilling than conquering a new frontier or championing a cause that they believe in.
It makes me think of those explorers and pioneers who risked everything for the unknown. That seems like a very Aries thing to do.
Indeed, that pioneering spirit, that willingness to venture into uncharted territory is a hallmark of the Aries archetype.
All right, so they're not afraid to take risks. They're driven by passion and a thirst for adventure. And they're not exactly known for their patience or financial planning. So how does all of this play out in the realm of love and relationships? Because we all know Aries can be pretty intense when it comes to matters of the heart.
Oh, absolutely. Get ready for fireworks, because when an Aries falls in love, it's with that same fiery, all-consuming passion.
Yeah.
That defines their entire being.
Okay, so we're talking grand gestures, whirlwind romances, and maybe a few dramatic outbursts along the way.
You got it. Goodman portrays Aries as being incredibly direct and passionate in matters of the heart. They don't play games or send mixed signals. What you see is what you get.
So no need for decoding cryptic texts or analyzing every word for hidden meaning. And Aries will let you know exactly how they feel, right?
Precisely. And while that directness can be refreshing, it can also lead to some bumps in the road. Remember, they haven't quite mastered the art of subtlety yet, so their bluntness, even when well-intentioned, can sometimes create friction in relationships.
It's like, I appreciate your honesty, but did you really have to phrase it like that?
Exactly. And because they're so present-focused, so driven by immediate feelings, they might unintentionally hurt their partner's feelings without even realizing it.
So it sounds like navigating a relationship with an Aries requires a certain level of understanding and a willingness to, shall we say, embrace the occasional explosion.
That's a good way to put it. But it's not all drama and intensity. Goodman also emphasizes that Aries individuals are capable of deep loyalty and affection. They're incredibly warm and generous with their love, and their enthusiasm can be incredibly charming.
So it's like riding a roller coaster, exhilarating highs, and maybe a few stomach-churning drops along the way.
That's a great analogy. And despite those potential bumps, there's never a dull moment with an Aries. Their fiery nature brings a lot of excitement and dynamism to a relationship. But it's important to remember that fire needs to be handled with care. Learning to communicate effectively and appreciate each other's differences is key to navigating the ups and downs of an Aries romance.
All right, so we've gotten a taste of how that Aries energy plays out in relationships. But I'm curious, what about their overall approach to life? What are some of the key themes that emerge from Goodman's work?
Well, what's striking is how she emphasizes this duality. Within the Aries nature, you have incredible strength and drive on one hand, and a certain vulnerability and need for validation on the other. It's this constant interplay between their fiery, assertive side and their childlike, innocent side. That makes Aries so fascinating.
I agree. And I think that duality is what makes them so relatable. We all have those different sides to ourselves, those inner conflicts we're constantly navigating.
Exactly. And understanding the Aries archetype can offer valuable insights into those universal human struggles, the battle between our impulses and our desire for maturity, the need to assert ourselves, while also learning to cooperate, the yearning for both independence and connection.
It's like a microcosm of the human experience, all wrapped up in this one astrological sign.
Precisely. And that's why even if you're skeptical about astrology, exploring these archetypes can be a powerful tool for self-discovery. and understanding the complexities of human nature.
I love that. It's like a roadmap to navigating not only our own inner landscapes, but also the relationships we have with the Aries folks in our lives. Speaking of which, how does understanding these Aries traits help us navigate those interactions? Because let's be real, sometimes dealing with an Aries can feel like walking on eggshells.
That's a great point. And Goodman offers some valuable insights here. Remember, Aries individuals are driven by that need for immediate action and recognition. So instead of trying to reason with them when they're in that fiery, impulsive mode, think back to that baby analogy.
Okay, so you're saying we shouldn't engage in a logical debate with an Aries who's in the middle of an emotional outburst?
Not if you want to avoid a head-on collision. Remember, they're not processing things intellectually at that moment. They're reacting from a place of pure emotion.
So what's the best approach then?
Think of how you'd handle a crying baby. You wouldn't try to reason with them, would you? You'd address their immediate need first. Maybe offer comfort, a distraction, or simply acknowledge their feelings. And then, once they've calmed down, you can have a more productive conversation.
Wow, that's such a helpful analogy. It's like instead of meeting fire with fire, you offer a soothing balm, a bit of understanding, and then gently guide them towards a calmer state.
Exactly. And once you've addressed that initial need for validation, you can appeal to their adventurous spirit, their love of a challenge, frame things in a way that sparks their enthusiasm, that ignites their passion, and you'll have them on board in no time.
Okay, so understanding their motivations and speaking their language is key. But what about their honesty? Goodman talks about how Aries are not big on manipulation or hidden agendas. What you see is what you get.
That's right. And while their bluntness can sometimes be jarring, it's important to remember that it usually comes from a place of genuine conviction, not malice. They're not thinking several steps ahead, strategizing, or trying to be manipulative. They're reacting in the moment, often with their emotions on full display.
So it's like they're constantly living in that present moment with that same childlike intensity we talked about earlier. That must make life pretty exciting, but also potentially exhausting for everyone around them.
That's a great observation. Goodman describes Aries individuals as being incredibly present-focused. Yesterday's regrets hold little weight, and tomorrow's worries are a distant concern. They're all about the here and now.
It's like they're perpetually starting with a clean slate, ready to tackle whatever comes their way. But how does that play out in situations that require planning and patience, like, say, building a career or managing finances? Because we've already established those aren't exactly their strong suits.
That's a good question. And it brings us to a key theme that emerges from Goodman's work: the importance of growth and self-awareness. For Aries, remember, they might start out as this bundle of raw energy, but their path is ultimately one of learning to harness that fire, to channel it towards constructive ends.
So it's not just about staying in that me-first mode forever.
Exactly. Goodman emphasizes that as Aries individuals mature, they begin to channel that raw energy into something more purposeful. They learn to temper their impulsiveness with wisdom and develop a more strategic approach to life.
So it's like that journey from the impulsive child.
To the wise
Well,
word, right.
Precisely. And that journey of growth and self-awareness is a key theme. That emerges from Goodman's work. Aries might start out as this bundle of raw energy, but their path is ultimately one of learning to harness that fire, to channel it towards constructive ends.
It's not about suppressing their nature, but about refining it, learning to balance their boldness with consideration for others, their desire for independence, with the need for connection. Exactly. It's a delicate dance, and it takes time and conscious effort. But when an Aries successfully navigates that journey, they become a force to be reckoned with.
So we're talking about a transformation from that demanding baby to a true leader, someone who can inspire and motivate others, but also navigate the complexities of life with a bit more finesse.
Precisely. And this brings us to another fascinating aspect of Goodman's analysis: the connection between Aries and their ruling planet, Mars.
Now, this is where I get a little geeky. I love the planetary connections.
Well, you'll appreciate this then. Goodman reminds us that Mars is not just the god of war, it's also the god of action, courage, and initiative. It's the driving force behind our ambition and our will to succeed.
So it's like that Martian energy is constantly pushing Aries to strive, to achieve, to conquer.
Yeah.
But it's up to them to decide how they channel that energy, right?
Exactly. It's about learning to wield that sword wisely. And here's where things get even more interesting. Goodman points out that Mars is also associated with iron, the metal that forms blood.
Okay, so we're going beyond the metaphorical now and into the literal physical realm.
Exactly. Goodman suggests that this connection highlights the importance of physical vitality. For Aries, remember, they're ruled by that fiery, active energy, so engaging in physical activity, whether it's sports, dance, or simply moving their bodies, is essential for their overall well-being.
It's like they need to keep that fire burning.
Yeah.
Both internally and externally.
Exactly. And this brings us to another fascinating point that Goodman makes. She suggests that Aries individuals often have a strong connection to their heads.
Okay, so we're not just talking figuratively about them being headstrong now. We're talking about a literal connection to their physical head.
Precisely. Remember those headaches we talked about earlier? Well, Goodman suggests that this is partly due to Aries ruling the head in medical astrology. They might also be prone to head injuries or experience tension in their head and neck area.
Wow, that's fascinating. So like their energy is concentrated in that area. And it makes me think about their tendency to charge headfirst into situations, both literally and metaphorically.
That's a great observation. And it highlights the importance of learning to temper that impulsiveness, to think before they act.
Yeah.
And to protect themselves from unnecessary risks.
So while that headstrong nature can be a source of strength and determination, it also requires a bit of self-awareness and caution. It's about finding that balance, isn't it?
Exactly. And that brings us back to that central theme of growth and evolution. Aries might start out as that fiery, impulsive ram, but their journey is ultimately about mastering that fire, about channeling it towards constructive ends, and about becoming the wisest, most authentic version of themselves.
It's like watching a superhero origin story unfold.
Yeah.
You see the raw power, the potential for both good and destruction, and then you witness the gradual emergence of a more nuanced, more mature understanding of how to use that power for the benefit of all.
That's a brilliant analogy, and it reminds us that we all have that potential within us. We all have that spark of the ram, that drive to create, to lead, to make our mark on the world. The challenge is learning to channel that energy wisely, to temper our impulses with compassion and foresight, and to use our gifts to make a positive impact. So, we've talked about Aries in love, but what about their friendships? Goodman paints a complex picture of Aries as friends, capable of deep loyalty, but also prone to those bursts of fiery energy we've been discussing.
It's like, they'll always have your back. Yeah. But you might also need to wear a fireproof vest when hanging out with them.
That's a great way to put it. They're the ride or die kind of friends, the ones who will show up at 3 a.m. with a shovel, no questions asked. Goodman emphasizes that their generosity knows no bounds when it comes to the people they care about.
So that whole fiery thing can actually be a good thing when it comes to friendship.
Absolutely. It fuels their loyalty and their willingness to go above and beyond. But of course, there's that flip side. Remember, Aries can be quick to anger, especially if they feel betrayed or disrespected.
And they're not exactly known for holding back their opinions, right? Even if it means accidentally scorching a few eyebrows in the process.
Exactly. Their honesty, while usually well-intentioned, can sometimes come across as harsh or insensitive, even in friendships. They might say something in the heat of the moment that they later regret.
So it's like navigating a minefield sometimes. You never know when you might accidentally step on a trigger and set off an explosion.
That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but it is true that maintaining a friendship with an Aries requires a certain level of understanding and adaptability.
It's like you learn to appreciate their directness without taking it personally.
Yeah.
And you accept that their outbursts are kind of like summer thunderstorms, intense, but brief. The sun comes out again pretty quickly.
That's a great analogy. And that ability to bounce back, to let go of anger and resentment, is a testament to their inherent optimism and their focus on the present moment.
It's like they have this incredible capacity to refresh and renew themselves.
Yeah.
To always see the possibility of a new beginning, which I guess makes sense, considering they're the first sign of the Zodiac. It's like they're eternally starting a new chapter.
That's a great point. There's a sense of spring-like renewal in their energy. And speaking of new beginnings, let's talk about career paths. We've touched on how Aries thrives on challenges and novelty. What does Goodman suggest for them in terms of finding fulfilling work?
Well, we know a typical 9-to-5 desk job probably isn't going to cut it, right? It's got to be something that allows them to express that dynamic energy, that pioneering spirit.
Exactly. Goodman highlights careers that allow them to be trailblazers, to lead the charge, to innovate and create. Think entrepreneurs, athletes, performers, roles where they can push boundaries and challenge the status quo.
It's like they need to feel like they're conquering new frontiers, whether that's in the business world, the creative arts, or even in their personal lives.
Indeed. That sense of adventure, that drive to push boundaries and explore uncharted territory is a core element of the Aries archetype. They might even find themselves drawn to more physically demanding jobs. Firefighters, surgeons, anything that requires quick thinking and decisive action.
Okay, so we've covered how this all plays out in friendships, career choices, but I'm thinking back to something you mentioned earlier about that duality in the Aries nature, the strength mixed with vulnerability. How does that factor into their overall journey, according to Goodman?
That's where it gets really interesting. Remember, we started by comparing Aries to a newborn baby, completely driven by their needs and desires. But just like a baby grows and matures, so does an Aries.
So it's not just about staying in that me-first mode forever.
Exactly. Goodman emphasizes that as Aries individuals mature, they begin to channel that raw energy into something more purposeful. They learn to temper their impulsiveness with wisdom and develop a more strategic approach to life.
So it's like that journey from the impulsive child to wise elder.
Precisely. And that journey of growth and self-awareness is a key theme that emerges. From Goodman's work, Aries might start out as this bundle of raw energy, but their path is ultimately one of learning to harness that fire, to channel it towards constructive ends.
It's not about suppressing their nature, but about refining it, learning to balance their boldness with consideration for others, their desire for independence, with the need for connection.
Exactly. It's a delicate dance, and it takes time and conscious effort. But when an Aries successfully navigates that journey, they become a force to be reckoned with.
So we're talking about a transformation from that demanding baby to a true leader, someone who can inspire and motivate others, but also navigate the complexities of life with a bit more finesse.
Precisely. And this brings us to another fascinating aspect of Goodman's analysis, the connection between Aries and their ruling planet, Mars.
Yeah, it's like we all have a little bit of Aries inside us, urging us to break free from the ordinary, to take risks and chase our dreams with that same fearless abandon.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And, maybe that's the ultimate lesson we can take from exploring the Aries archetype, to embrace that inner fire, that spark of courage and individuality, and to allow it to guide us on our own unique journeys.
Yeah, it's a reminder that life is meant to be lived fully, passionately, and with a healthy dose of that Aries boldness. But it's also about finding that balance, right? That wisdom that allows us to channel that energy in a way that benefits not only ourselves, but also the world around us.
Precisely. It's about learning to be both, the fiery warrior and the compassionate leader, the impulsive child and the wise elder. It's about embracing all the contradictions and complexities that make us human.
And I think that's a pretty inspiring message. No matter what your astrological sign might be, it's a call to action, an invitation to tap into that inner Aries and to live a life that's both meaningful and authentic.
And this raises an important question, If Aries is often described as the infant of the Zodiac, constantly seeking immediate gratification and pushing boundaries, what happens when they encounter the inevitable limitations and frustrations of the real world? How do they learn to navigate those challenges without losing their spark, their zest for life?
That is a great question to ponder. It makes me think about how we all have to grapple with those moments of disillusionment, those times when life doesn't quite meet our,
expectations.
And maybe for Aries, the key is finding ways to maintain that sense of wonder and possibility, even when faced with, setbacks and disappointments. It's about learning to see those challenges as opportunities for growth, as stepping stones on the path to becoming a more mature and well-rounded. It's about transforming that childlike impulsiveness into a more focused determination, that raw energy into a force for good. It's about evolving from the demanding baby into the inspiring leader, the compassionate visionary.
Exactly. And that journey of transformation, that evolution of the Aries spirit, is something that can inspire us all, regardless of our, astrological inclinations. It reminds us that growth is a lifelong process, and that even amidst the complexities and challenges of life, we can always strive to become the best, most authentic versions of ourselves.
So whether you're an Aries yourself, or you simply know someone who embodies that fiery, passionate energy, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights into the heart of the Ram. It's a reminder that even the most impulsive, headstrong individuals have the potential for growth, wisdom, and ultimately for making a positive impact on the world around them.
And maybe by understanding the Aries archetype, we can all learn to embrace our own inner fire, to channel our passions wisely, and to live lives that are both bold and meaningful.
Well, we'll see you next time. for another deep dive into the fascinating world of human nature and all its complexities. Thanks for listening.